But she said, you know what, she was like looking at me one
Oh
day.
my God, you'd be so much prettier if you didn't have the disgusting
No, she
nose.
goes, you're pretty, but you would be like gorgeous if you had a nose job. And I said, really? And I wasn't even like really thinking about it.
Well,
and
she
then,
lied to you. That's not
I have a
right.
horrible memory, just like she
no,
does.
that's really not true. Wait, let me just put a little.
What time is your book club?
My name is Olivia. I'm 16 years old and I have transverse myelitis. I developed transverse myelitis on July 10th, 2009. I was out in Arizona on a summer trip and I was driving on a bus with 40 other kids from Scottsdale, Arizona to Las Vegas. And we were on the bus for about 3 or 4 hours. After 2 hours, we stopped at a gas station for people to get up and buy drinks and go to the bathroom. And my legs were tingly and pins and needles, and I thought they were just asleep from being on the bus for so long. So I got up and I decided I was going to walk around to try to get the feeling back. And I suddenly couldn't feel my butt. So I sat down on the blacktop and it was about 102 degrees and I realized I couldn't feel how hot the ground was. My counselor came over and she asked me why I was sitting on the ground and I told her I couldn't feel my legs. So my counselor picked me up and I stood up and I collapsed, and that was the last time I felt my legs.
My initial reaction was that she probably pinched a nerve, like sleeping on the bus. She was in a bad position or something. So I said, wait a few minutes, walk around a little, and I'm sure it'll come back. But within an hour, it wasn't coming back, and that's when I told them to send her to bring her to the emergency room.
The nurse decided to pinprick my legs just to make sure that I couldn't feel anything. And she was pricking them and I couldn't feel anything, and I looked down and I saw I was bleeding and I still couldn't feel anything that was going on.
My mother and I went out to Las Vegas where she was in the hospital, and when I first walked in, of course, I started crying, just seeing her in bed, not knowing exactly what had happened or what was going on.
They ran CAT scans and spinal taps and MRIs, and they tested for bug bites and any type of infection, and they finally, after about 2 days, came up with the diagnosis of transverse myelitis. Transverse myelitis is an autoimmune disease that happens to 1,500 people every year, and it's when your body attacks its own spinal cord and the myelin sheath that surrounds it. And once that myelin is damaged, the nerve endings are also damaged, and you can be paralyzed from anywhere from the knees down, from your waist down, or even from your neck down. I'm paralyzed right around my belly button down.
When this first happened, I immediately contacted the world's foremost expert in transverse myelitis. His name is Dr. Douglas Kerr, and when we went to see him, he told us everything that was going to be done in the future, and he actually said that Olivia will not be an older person in a wheelchair.
1/3 of all people who have transverse myelitis recover completely. 1/3 will recover a little bit of feeling and a little bit of motor skills, and 1/3 won't recover at all. They are doing a lot of stem cell research in hospitals to help remyelinate the spinal cord and help the nerve endings, and hopefully within the next 10 or 20 years, they'll have something out like that will help me. After being in the hospital for 2 weeks in Las Vegas, they flew me back to an inpatient rehabilitation center in New York, where I stayed for 7 weeks. I was doing physical therapy every day to get my body used to being in a wheelchair and not standing and doing the same exact things that I was doing before. And after about 7 weeks of being in the rehab center, I finally went home and I started school half day just to transition into things and doing physical therapy for the other half. I was also learning how to do everyday things like get dressed by myself and taking a shower by myself and getting around, just doing everyday things I need to do independently. And once I was ready, I went back to school full day, and now I'm in school for 6 hours every day.
I think the most stressful part of this whole incident has been seeing your child go from a very healthy, vibrant, active person to not being able to walk. I mean, that to me has been the hardest obstacle I've had to overcome as a mom. The hardest thing for Olivia has probably been just not being able to do every single thing that she used to be able to do.
When I do get frustrated, it's definitely one of the hardest things. I think about the fact that I might never ever be able to walk again, and I might never be able to experience the same things as everybody else around me. And it definitely frustrates me the most that I can't just do normal everyday activities the same as everybody else, like walking up and down the stairs and dancing and running, and simple things like that probably frustrate me the most. To make everything worse, at the time, both of my parents had lost their jobs, so we didn't have a lot of income coming in. And before I came home from being at the hospital for 7 weeks, we had to install a bathroom so I'd be able to take a shower and live a normal life. And thankfully I had friends, and our whole town was really supportive, and my best friend started a benefit at my high school, and it was a concert of her dance company dancing, and we actually raised enough money to put in a beautiful new handicap bathroom right downstairs in my house.
The second fundraiser that we held for the FES bike was wonderful when this local charity that was set up in honor of 2 boys who were killed in a car accident. Olivia happens to be very close friends with one of the young guy's brothers. They found out about Olivia's situation and our situation, my husband and I not working, and they came over and gave us a large check.
They donated $15,000 to my family and I to afford the FES bike, which was one of the pieces of equipment that we could not afford. And it's changed my life. It's functional electrical stimulation. And it's basically a stationary bike that I attach my legs to, and I attach electrodes, 8 electrodes on my quads, my hamstrings, and my glutes. And I plug it in, and it moves my legs for me as it gives electrical stimulation to my muscles to help them have muscle contractions. We have a standing frame, which is a chair that I sit in, and it locks my knees, and I pump myself up into a standing position. And it's really good for weight bearing and for my muscles, because I don't get the weight bearing on my muscles that I used to. We installed hand controls in my mom's car, and I can drive just like everybody else. And I'm taking my road test in about 5 days to get my license, and it's one of the most exciting things that I've ever experienced. I push down for the gas, and I push forward for the brake. And this is called a suicide knob, because I have to turn the wheel with one hand. It makes it a lot easier for me. The biggest misconception that people have about my disease is whether or not it's contagious. They need to know that it's absolutely 100% not contagious, and you're not going to catch it from me. When people first see me in a wheelchair, I can always tell what they're thinking, and it's whether or not I'm mentally stable. A lot of people do stare at me when I go out in public, and if they don't know me or if they haven't seen me in a long time, but there are the few people that will come over and actually ask me what happened, and I do appreciate that, because it makes me feel better to know that they're not staring at me and thinking of what could possibly be wrong with me, but they're actually curious and they want to know what's going on in my life. I think that in the future, my love life and my dating life is probably going to be a little more complicated and definitely harder than anybody else's. I think some guys will be scared to come up and approach me, and they might not be interested in me, but I also think that there are going to be plenty of other guys who will see me for who I actually am and can look past the wheelchair.
Through this whole process, she's actually gotten stronger, and she's proved to be such an awe-inspiring kid that I am so amazed by her all the time.
I try to be really optimistic about my situation in hopes that I will one day walk again, but I also know that it might not ever happen. So I do have to adapt and realize that if I do never walk again, this is going to be my life and I'm just going to have to fight through it and deal with it. I know now that I can pretty much get through anything. And even though there are times where everything just seems impossible and I think, why me? Why did this have to happen to me? I know that in the long run, this is going to make me a stronger person, so I never ever give up.